Hey there neighbors, Kevin here with etrailer, and today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Hellwig rear anti-sway bar here on our 2018 Ford F-150. What our neighbor was dealing with a lot of is just kind of side-to-side play. A lot of the time when you're out on the highway you'll get those crosswinds where it's kind of trying to throw you around. And now typically we're putting a lot of these on motorhomes, but it's the same for your passenger vehicle as well. Adding on a sway bar is going to really help with your steering ability and then also just overall keeping you tracking nice and straight. I've installed one myself on my own truck, and honestly it's night and day difference. This is probably one of the best upgrades you can actually make for your vehicle. Honestly it's hard to even fully put it into words just how big of a difference this really does make. Especially even I'm on the lowest setting when it comes to this, and this one actually has 3 settings when it comes to the firmness of our bar here. And essentially what's going to happen is as we start kind of leaning one way or the other, maybe you're getting crosswinds where it's now pushing more on one side, or maybe you just have extra weight, like an offset load in the bed, and it's kind of starting to lean you one way or the other. Well, your suspension kind of compresses, decompresses back and forth with that, and then when you're adding in speed into this, it kind of exaggerates that. So we're getting much more play back and forth, whereas when we add in our sway bar, now we have this big hunk of steel which is essentially a spring, and it wants to retain its shape. It wants to keep going back to its natural state here. So when you start pulling down on one side, what it's going to want to do is pull itself right back up. So it's going to help keep us nice and level, keep us straight, make sure that we're not leaning too far one way or the other. And what that does is when we are going to make those turns, you'll notice it just kind of follows right behind you, just kind of glides behind you, which is, like I said, hard to describe, but just like a night and day difference in terms of handling. So taking a closer look at our components here, our sway bar does have a nice hammered powder coat finish here, so looks super nice. It's going to hold up well. You won't see as much rusting on that, and it kind of helps hide some of the scratches too, because obviously rocks are going to kick up and hit this over time, or something else in the road. When you're going down, might end up hitting it. And usually when you see those factory sway bars that are just powder coated black, usually after a while they start turning orange. You get that real rusted look to it and kind of looks like crap. Whereas with these, you typically don't see that as often or anywhere near as bad. So that's one thing I do really like that Hellwig does. Moving on from there, we have our brackets. Now these, obviously, they're not really custom fit. It's essentially just a U-bolt here. And we have just normal D-shaped brackets up on the end links. It's kind of the same thing that you'd see with most vehicles. With all that being said, I do feel like you could definitely do this one at home. You don't need a lift. You don't really need any specialty tools. You will need a torque wrench though, so make sure that you pick one up here at etrailer or from your local auto parts store. So that way you can torque down each one of your bolts, because this is going to be a reoccurring thing. You will need to have a torque wrench each time. So they want you to retorque these after 1 week of use after you first install it, and then once again ever so often. So I'd probably do it about once a month, maybe just check it. And honestly, it should only take you a couple of minutes just because it's only a few bolts here. So if this is something where you're just not super comfortable with, or maybe you just don't have the tools and you don't want to hang on to the tools, definitely feel free to use our dealer locator. You can enter in your zip code and find a shop near you to get it professionally installed. And then when it comes to checking the torque, you can reach back out to that dealer again, have them check it for you. Now, if you are wanting to do this yourself though, definitely stick around and we'll walk you through the process. So to start off our install, I've already removed our spare tire. They don't list that as a requirement, but obviously you're all in this space where the tire is going to be, so it makes sense to get it out of the way. From there, we're going to pick up what is called our threaded plate, which essentially is just a spacer with threaded holes in it, so that way we can tie in one of our 1/2-inch bolts. They're 1 inch long, so pretty easy to pick out. And then we're going to have what they call as a clevis. So this bracket right here is going to tie in. We'll have our threaded plate inside of our frame rail. This is going to match up with it. We'll bolt that up, and then our end links are going to actually attach to this part right here. So what we're looking for is on our frame rail, you can see up about halfway up a gas tank. Here's that hole. We're going to have our threaded plate up inside of there. You'll see that poking out, and how you're going to get to that is there's that stick that's welded onto it, and it's pretty long, and that's because we're going to go all the way back here to the opening inside of our frame rail right above our spring stack. So you can see our jounce bumper here right above that. And what I like to do is I've kind of already bent it how I want it to sit. So we have our frame kind of coming down, so I kind of angled it a little bit more up, so that way when I get it in there, I can kind of use the stick to press it down up against the bottom of our frame rail. And then I've also kind of curved it more so that I can get it in the hole and then get it down to where it needs to be. So I'm going to slide this in. We'll get that pushed over. And then we should see this, or even be able to feel it right here. So inside of our framing, it's kind of a two-piece sandwich that's been welded together. So you can feel there's a block right above it. So it's really not much room for it to go anywhere besides right where you want it. And I've got it lined up now here so you can see. And we're gonna do the same thing over on the other side as well. Once you get that in place, we're now grabbing our clevis and one of our 1/2-inch bolts. We're gonna put that up. It's gonna thread right into that, and we'll get that tightened down and torqued as well. So one other thing I noticed on the driver's side, we have a gaping opening here inside of our frame because this cross tube goes right across and gives us easy access because there actually is a hole cut inside here and on our specific model. Might not always be the same for yours, but if you have it, definitely see if you can use that instead. Using the stick here to get this to cooperate isn't always the easiest. But now I can actually get some pressure on it and get that bolt to fully take in. All right, so I got that on now finally. When you're tightening this down, make sure that you have the clevis facing the correct way so you can see it turning on me as I'm tightening. We want to have this facing front to back here. So that way when we go to put on our clevis, it's gonna match right up. Or sorry, our end link. Now we'll repeat this over on the passenger side. Next we can build our end links. I've already got one built up. Here is what we're looking for. We got the male and female ends of our end links. We're gonna have a sleeve and bushings, and you'll have two of those, and these are gonna slot right into each other. So we'll push that sleeve in first. Once that's on, you could then lubricate that up with the lube, and then we're going to press this into the eyelets. I'm going to wait on that because I want to get my jam nut put onto the threaded rod first, and I'm going to thread that into the male or the female side of our end link. So I'm going to run this down pretty far, probably about 3/4 of the way, just so it's out of the way. We can tighten that up once we know exactly what height we need to be at with this. From there we take the female end, we'll pop that on. I'm going to run that down a good ways, but we don't know exactly what we need yet height-wise, so don't need to go too crazy. From there, like I said, we're taking our lubricant, and we're just going to spray a bit of that all over. I'm going to set that aside, get the other one ready, and then from there, I'm going to take this over to a bench vise, and I'm going to use that to squeeze this in. You can do it by hand, but obviously it's going to be a lot easier if you have a vise. And we'll just repeat that for our other end link. So with my hands still dirty, I'm going to lubricate the other bushings as well. So these are the ones that are going to go with the D-shaped brackets, and these actually clamp onto our sway bar. So I just put a pretty good glob of it inside usually, and then kind of spin it around with my finger. Try to get it all kind of mashed around. They give you 2 tubes of it, so definitely feel free to glob it up as best you can. This lubricant is going to help this kind of move, because as your suspension compresses and decompresses, the sway bar will actually move back and forth a little bit. So we want a little bit of movement, but we don't want a ton. All right, now that that's globbed up, I'm going to go wash my hands, and we can move on to our next step. All right, now we'll grab our completed end links, and we're going to grab 2 of our 7/16 by 2 1/4 bolts. They're the shorter ones out of the 2 longer bolts. There's also going to be some lock nuts. You'll see they're the smaller of the 2 sizes, and we are going to be installing our end links on the clevis brackets that we installed. We're going to be doing the threaded side up, so we'll have that side go through. Now the bushing is a little tight on this, so you will have to kind of force it in a little bit. But once you wiggle that into place, we'll then pop in our bolt. I'm going to do bolt head facing out towards these leaf spring packs, so that way I got less kind of sticking out there. And on the nut side here, I'm just going to hand tighten this for now. We'll come back and fully tighten it down later. I'm going to do this same thing over on the other side as well. So for our next part, we're going to be actually hanging the sway bar up onto our end links, but I kind of wanted to go over a couple things first. So you'll see that there's 3 separate holes on each side of our sway bar, and that's going to just be your way of adjusting the tension here. So if you go to the outermost hole, the one closest to the edge, that one's going to be basically your standard setting for firmness. Now if you go up to that middle one, it's going to increase in that firmness, and then also for the innermost hole here, which is closest to our center of our sway bar, that's going to be the most. Now on mine, when I personally installed one on my truck, I just went with the normal one. Night and day difference. If you're someone who's going to be doing a whole lot more with it, you're really out there driving around crazy or hitting some really rough roads, maybe increase that firmness. But honestly, it's not really that hard to unbolt this later on and kind of increase that firmness if you do decide, maybe this isn't enough for me, or maybe you decide, this is a little bit too firm and I need to kind of draw it back one. So with our neighbor today though, he's wanting to go with the just normal, see how it goes, and then from there we can adjust things as we need. But for the hardware on this, I'm going to be using the 2 3/4 inch 7/16 bolts, and then we're also going to have 2 washers and a lock nut as well. So what I'm going to do is this is going to sit inside of the 2 end links here. So we'll hold this up, and I'll probably just pop a bolt in just to kind of keep it up on one side, and then we can do the other side correctly. So I've done a flat washer onto my bolt. We're going to pass that in from the outside, facing in towards the center of our vehicle. That's going to also pass through our sway bar. From there, we'll take another flat washer and then another one of our 7/16 lock nuts. I'm going to just hand thread that on right now. We're not going to go super tight or anything crazy like that. Now we can switch back over to the other side and get this one correct as well. So, like I said, we'll pass through our bolt with a flat washer. Get that ready. Another flat washer, and then our lock nut. Next, I'm going to pop on my bushings to my sway bar here. I wish they had a little bit more of an angle to them. You're going to get your hands all dirty again trying to put these back on. There we go. We want these kind of closer to the outside bend here. I'm going to do the same on the other side. Next, we're going to grab our U-bolts, and we want to kind of figure out where this is going to live on our axle. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff in the way. On the driver's side, you got all your brake lines and hoses and wiring, harnesses all tied in right there. So I kind of snuck it in right under this bracket, and it was still enough space that we were fine with our bushing to match up with that over on that side. Now over here on the passenger side, there is a brake line bracket here, so I just scooted the bushing over just slightly. We're going to go right on the edge of that. Now when you're putting this in, make sure that you are getting it behind any kind of wiring or brake lines. We don't want it to start crunching down on those lines at all while we're tightening down our U-bolt here. All right, next we can grab our D-shaped mounting bracket. That's going to go right over the bushing. You can see we got this somewhat started lining it up with our U-bolt here. Go ahead, grab your axle bracket as well. We're going to get these all lined up together. There we go. Once you have that all lined up, grab yourself a flat washer and lock nut. Get that started on there. You don't need to go crazy with it. We're still going to get the other side, and then kind of center our sway bar before we fully tighten anything down. But once you get the nut on both sides, it'll kind of hold itself up, and then you can do the same thing over on the passenger side. All right, I'm going to snug these down. I am not fully tightening them yet. Like I said, I do still need to center my sway bar, but I want to get this a little bit closer so the movements that I do aren't going to get thrown off once we start snugging it down for real. So what I'm doing right now is trying to get the bar as level as possible. So I've got my level on here. So this section of our bar is all pretty straight. Obviously, it's, you know, curving around the differential here, but it's all kind of the same height if you laid this down on the ground, whereas it kind of bends up right here. So I'm using this as my guide, essentially, to get this level. And what we're doing at this point, since I've got the U-bolts how I want them, I'm now adjusting my end links to make that match. So I know I need to come down a little to right about here. So I need to make sure that my end link matches up. You can see I'm probably a good 1/4 inch, maybe even a 1/2 inch, a little bit too high with my end link. So I just loosen that up, bring it back over, see if that matches while staying level. Looks like I could go maybe 2 more turns here. Then we just pop our bolt back in and put our I'm doing it backwards here. Pop our bolt back in and put our hardware back on, and then we can check it one more time. So the other half of this is also getting this centered. Now with our setup, pretty much impossible, just because we've got these brackets in the way. I can't really shift my U-bolts anymore to get this perfectly centered. So get it as close as you can. So as I was kind of snugging down on the U-bolts, I kind of pushed over to this side, so it would kind of pull it more over, just because we were fighting against this bracket here. But now that I have that all snugged down how I want it, I got it as level as I can get it. Now at this point we need to go back and retorque all of our hardware. Hardware is going to be different depending on the sizing, so double check that last page in your instructions. It has all of the torque specs listed for you based on bolt size. We're going to get both the top and bottom torque to spec, and then we're also going to come back for that jam nut and get that tightened down as well. All right, now for the jam nut, I'm using a 7/8 wrench, and I'm just going to run that down by hand. And then once we have it all the way down, come back with our wrench and just give it a good snug. Last thing to torque is my U-bolts, and when I'm doing this, I want to go back and forth between them. I want to try and keep the same amount of threads on both sides. So as you're doing it, you will want to make sure you're kind of going back and forth, do a couple cranks on one side, switch over to the other. Just kind of keep it even. Otherwise, if you do too much on one side, it can actually end up kind of loosening the other side up, and then it'll get to a point where it's just going to be too hard to actually fully tighten it down. So for the next step, they do list to actually sit here and kind of shake your truck around. So what I'm going to do is kind of at the back, just use my weight to compress the suspension. And what we're looking for here, as you can see the bar moving a little bit, is we want to make sure that we're not pinching any lines. No brake lines are getting caught in anything. We're not catching anything with our end links. Essentially just making sure that each time the suspension compresses and decompresses, it's not going to end up interfering with anything else, which looks like we're good at this point. So that is going to do it for the installation. The only thing that is left to do after this is, after the first week of driving, they want you to come back down, retorque everything, and then just as routine maintenance, just maybe before you go on a trip, maybe every month or so, just get back down here, recheck those torques, make sure everything is still nice and tight, up to spec, and that's going to do it. That's going to do it for our look at and installation of the Hellwig rear anti-sway bar here on our 2018 Ford F-150. My name's Kevin, and if you still have some questions about what's going to be the right sway bar kit for your F-150, please feel free to reach out to us via our Ask the Experts link, a comment on this video, or a phone call to our customer service department, and we'd be happy to help you out on your journey.